Hello, internets. Let's see. So today on this stream, I had this idea um, to build a bot that would check for me, test whether. Yeah, you're live. So go ahead. You can stop me. What's up? Oh, you're hearing me twice? Are you watching the stream? Yeah. Oh, okay. You just mute YouTube, and then you won't hear me from there. Okay. Is that better? Okay, perfect. Yeah. So so here's the idea. If you go to Uscis processing times, if you search for that on Google and you go to the first link, you'll get this check case processing times, and then you have a choice of a set of forms here. So if we select I-130 and we select the California Service Center, and then we click Get Processing Time, we get this page, and then the important information is actually down here. We have an estimated time range, a form type, and a receipt date for case inquiry. And what I want is the ability to get a notification when this changes, because right now I'm logging into this website every day or every other day to see if the number has changed. And yeah, so I want to know when this thing changes. And I want to check basically on a daily basis, but I want a computer program, a robot, to do it for me instead of me doing it myself. Correct. Yeah, so basically only if we see, so right now it says February 5th, 2019, and if tomorrow it's also February 5th, don't bother sending me a notification. But if the number changes at all, I want to know what it changes to. Sounds good? Okay. So we're going to build this in Python because it's basically pretty easy to do that. But before we talk about building it, I think it's useful to talk about what problem it is we're trying to solve here. So as I've talked about in the JavaScript stream with Satch and Rickles, we talked about how there's syntax, and we talked about how there is problem solving. And those two are actually different things. They're often coupled together, but they're different things. So I thought that what we could do first is start with some pseudocode, and then get to the actual Python code later. Yeah. Okay, let me actually create a new folder where we're going to build this. So workspace, and make a new directory, and we'll call it uscis processing times. Yeah, I'll just make it match the URL up here. And then we'll go into that directory and create a new file, create a new project in VS Code, and make it the right size for the stream. All right. Okay. Yeah, some errors going on. Doesn't look like it's important though, so I'll just close those things. All right, so we'll write our pseudocode over here. So let's take a look. This file will be our README, so I can just start by saving it and just calling it readme.md. Pseudocode. So the pseudocode here is essentially, it's going to look something like this. We're going to say, retrieve the processing time from Uscis website. Yep. So that's going to be step one. Step one is retrieve the value, retrieve this row from the Uscis website, right? Then the next step after that would be, so we need to compare this to the previous value. So so that means we need to have stored the previous value somewhere. So I think a simple thing there would be we could just have a file on the computer where this is running, and every time we run the script, we just read the file, and then we can check to see if the value in that file is different from the value that's on the website. And if it's different, then we'll send a notification. And then we'll also update the file. And if it's not different, we don't do anything. So read the previous processing time from disk, right? So those are step 1 and step 2. If, yeah, go ahead. That's a good question. I'm thinking it'll just be a plain text file that will just, yeah, because the one I care about is this one. So yeah, then so once we retrieve those two, compare previous processing time from current processing time. So we can compare it with, and then we'll just say if they are different, then send a notification. Let's put then here. Send a notification. And if they're different, so we need to do two things. One is send the notification, and then the second thing is update the previous processing time with the current processing time. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Let's actually update our pseudocode. So retrieve the receipt date for a case inquiry from USCIS processing times website. And then read the previous receipt date from disk. Compare the previous, and then I think we can just replace all of them. Compare previous receipt date with current receipt date. If they are different, then send a notification and update the previous receipt date with the current receipt date. Save. So when I say update, I also mean update the value on disk. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ah. Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. So the idea here is that we will not just store, we will not just replace the previous value. We may want to keep track of um, each day's value over time. Or maybe not necessarily each day's, but when it changes, what day it changed, and then what it changed to. Okay. Okay. We'll do that. I won't put it as part of the pseudocode. But yeah, we'll do that. Okay. All right. So there's a few. So now that we have this pseudocode, we should think through how we're going to do it. So there is retrieve the receipt date. So that means reading this value, and that probably immediately raises the question: how do you read that receipt value? And I happen to already know because I already spent time trying to figure out how to do it. So I cheated. But the way to check is load the web page, and then open up this network tab. And what we'll do is we will clear that. So okay, so this is what it looks like before we click the Get Processing Time button. If we now select I-130, and then, so that resulted in a request to the internet. And if we click it, we can see what it did. And what we notice is that it returned this JSON thing. It's not super readable, but just a quick glance at this enables us to understand that what it did was it retrieved the values to populate in this second field. So I'm guessing it makes sense. This field depends on the value in this field. The field office or service center depends on the form value. Yeah, so by setting a value here, a request is made to the internet, to the USCIS webpage, to retrieve what the values should be. So now we can select this and click, for example, California Service Center. No further requests have been made. And then if we click Get Processing Time, there's some animation to fill out some data down here. But the important bit is this one here, CSC. So if we click on this, we see that there is this Json payload. And inside of it, it looks like we have both the English and some Spanish text for the form. So it's basically filling this table out, right? And it has all of our timings information here under things like service request date. Now this is slightly hard to read, so we should load this up into Jupyter or something to see what it says. But the important bit is actually that there is a request object here that we can use. And if we go, yes, yeah, yes. The URL that we make a request to here, and the response is what constitutes this API. Yeah, it's not a public API though. So, like, I don't think the USCIS is, has documented that this is how their API works, and that they should, and that people who are integrating with it should use it this way. I think they just made their web page and made an API that works with their web page, and they only expect themselves to really be using it. Yeah, but we are writing a bit of automation on top. So I didn't know that this was here. This is the way to look at it. There's a preview, which is a nicer view of the payload. So the payload has data, and then inside there's processing times. And then inside processing times, there's subtypes. And then in subtypes, the one that we want is going to be one of these. I think it's 0. It is not 0. I'm wrong. Wait, no, it is. No, this is for a spouse or child. Yeah, that is me. Yeah, I'm a spouse. Okay. Yeah, this is the one. So I want subtype 0, or I guess the correct form type is 134A-F21. Oh, and this is interesting. They put when the publication date. So there's this publication date here. I think this might be when it was last updated. And and then there's the yeah, and then here's the service request date. I don't think so. Because I'm pretty sure I checked this last week, and this was January. Yeah, and then it changed. So I don't think we can trust it. I think what we have to do, so I think originally I might have done something like store the publication date and store the service request date in a file, right? But now I'm probably going to not do that. I might store them anyway, but I think that what I'll store is, I'll store my own date to represent the last time I saw a change. All right. So let's, yeah, long story short now, what we're doing is we're going to make a request to this CSC in Python, and then we should get back this object, and we should be able to pull subtypes. We should be able to loop through subtypes to pull out the 134A-F21 subtype to retrieve the correct service request date. So we can expand on our pseudocode here. Retrieve. So the process of retrieving the receipt date is make a query to the CSC URL and pull out the appropriate subtype. It's okay. I don't need to put it in the pseudocode. It's fine. All right, new file. So we're just going to make this. This is going to be the top file, the one that does all the work. And we're only going to have one file. So let's call it notify updated receipt date. Yeah, .py. And we're also going to use, we're going to need some libraries to help us. I mean, strictly speaking, we won't, but I like using requests to make requests to the internet. There's a library called requests to make a call to the internet. You don't strictly need it, but I find it easier to use than the default stuff that comes with Python. Requirements.txt. So this allows us to tell our whatever's going to be running our app. It'll enable that to know what libraries, what dependencies we have. And so we have a dependency on requests. So let's open up a terminal here. And the first thing that I want to do is inside our Python script, I just want to make sure that I can run it. User bin env python 3. And in here, we're just going to do import requests. And let's just print hello world. Okay. And let's make sure that we can run it. So right now, I think it's going to work because we're using my default Python interpreter, which has requests installed. But so we can double check that that's true. First thing to do is make our script executable. So that's chmod plus x, the file. And now we're able to run the file. And there it says hello world. But before we do those things, I want to make a self-contained Python environment for our app. So there's a way to do that. I always forget what it is, but it's in my history. Basically, what I'm doing here is I'm going to be creating a virtual environment. Okay, so that's how you do it. So to create a virtual environment, we say Python 3, and then we invoke a module in Python 3 called venv, and we tell it to create the folder .venv. So we can just run this. And if you do this, VS Code will notice that we have a virtual environment, and it asks us, do we want to select it for the workspace? And the answer is yes. Let it do that. And now VS Code notices, like now it's underlining requests here. It's saying it's could not be resolved. And the reason for that is because we haven't installed it into this virtual environment. And so we need to do that. So first thing to do is activate the virtual environment in our terminal. I think the easy way to do that is just, I think it's just close the terminal and then open it up again. And then VS Code will do it for us. Yeah, there. Oh, in the previous command, that allows us to, so Python has a set of executable modules available, and you can execute those modules with a -m. So you can say Python 3 -m, and there's a few useful, interesting ones. There's one that will run a web server for you and serve the files in the current folder. There's one that will parse some JSON for you. In this case here, we're running a module called virtual environment. Yes, it does. That's what it stands for. So now so I have a nice terminal that expresses things for me. So we have created the virtual environment in a folder called .venv, and VS Code knows about it. So when I opened up a new terminal, it activated the terminal for me automatically. And we can tell that that's true because my terminal is set up to tell us when a virtual environment is active by printing it here next to my, like printing it as part of my prompt. And now if I try to run our notify script, it won't work. And the reason it won't work is because requests, the library I depend on, doesn't exist in this virtual environment yet. So we have to say pip install -r, and then we pass it our requirements file. And this will install the things necessary to run our script in this virtual environment. So now we should be able to run our script, and it says hello world. Okay. All right. The next step is to make a, yep. Where does it say hello world? Line 4. Okay. All right. The next step is to make a call to this URL. So we can right click it in the browser and we can say copy. I think we can just say copy link address. This is just a get. And then over here we can say requests.get, and then we can paste the URL. So there's our URL. And this will return a response object. And I believe we can just say print response.json. And formatter black is not installed. Install? The answer is always yes, because I like automatic formatting. All right, let's see if this works. Notify updated receipt date. Okay, so something is wrong with the JSON payload. Let's see what happened. Print response.text. Let's comment this line out. Yeah, so we call I don't know why I call it a payload. That's a common term just used. It's the full set of data that comes back from making the request to the internet. Like it's whatever's in the body. And then that body needs to be typically decoded as something. And I attempted to decode it as JSON. Oh, I think I know what I did wrong. Basically, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what I did wrong. Let's just run this again to see. Oh, not found. Hold on. So, hold on. Copy. I don't think this link address is correct. Copy. Let's see. Copy as fetch. So the fetch is a JavaScript thing. Oh, okay. I may have had to put... Okay. Let's quickly pull up how to do a request. This is interesting. I thought that this would have... I thought I did this before in the browser. I thought this works. Oh, it's saying not found now. Oh. Interesting. Okay. Let me try setting some additional headers. I think it needs specific headers to be set. So requests, Python, requests, headers. So what I want to do is I want to set some of the headers that the site might be expecting. So here they are. Let's put this here. Headers. And then some of the headers that I think we care about are these ones. We may want to set the refer as well. Let's put this one first, though. So let's see which ones I think matter. It could be that these ones down here need to be set as part of the... Maybe the refer? Okay, let's just start with this one here. Okay. And let's see if I can set the refer. Python. requests, refer. Like this. Okay, let's try using this one. And let's try setting the refer policy. Okay. We need to comment this bit out. Let's see if it works this time. Yeah, okay. So we no longer need this bit. And let's see what it needed. I want to make my request as minimal as possible. So I pass these three things. If I don't pass this one, does it still work? The answer is yes. If I don't pass this one, does the request still work? Yes. Okay. So it just needed a refer. All right. So now we are correctly retrieving this JSON payload, and we should be able to decode this as JSON, right? Okay. So we should be able to, this line should work now. Let's give it a try. Okay, cool. It is working. So this is now decoding as JSON, and we should be able to access the field that we were seeing before. So we should, so we know that the field we care about is the one that is 134A-F21 from the subtypes field inside of processing time, inside of data, right? So let's see if we can retrieve that. So we've got enough here that we can start putting this into a function. So let's create a function, and we'll call it get receipt date, or better yet, let's call it get current receipt date. And get current receipt date will make a request to the server. It comes back as resp, and then we'll store this into payload equals. So payload now has our JSON. Payload now has our JSON object, and as you know, JSON decodes. So payload now actually is the dictionary. Like looking at this object and this thing in the terminal, this is the dictionary, right? Hey Shua, welcome to the stream. That was in Discord, I think. Yeah. Hi, Grace. Oh, she can't hear us. She needs to join the stream. She may not know. Oh. Okay. We don't. We don't. You're right. For this particular function, there isn't any arguments we would need in particular. Like maybe this URL could have been an argument or something, but nope. Because I'm building this. We're building this thing to do something very specific. And so because we're not trying to make something general, it's okay if it only does it's okay if it does only exactly what we want, which in our case is pull out this particular receipt date. You know, if someone else wanted to use this, they could modify the code directly. Yeah. Okay. So let's see if we can extract the subtype we care about, right? So, because this is one big dictionary, we need to sort of drill down into it, right? So let's say, let's do it this way. Let's say we know that the payload has a field called data, and we know the inside of data, we need processing time, right? So let's put that here, processing underscore time. And then inside of processing time, we know we have the subtypes. So let's grab subtypes, right? Okay, so subtypes is a list, right? So let's put subtypes into a list here. And we can test as we go. Let's print the value of subtypes. And let's call our function, get current receipt date. And let's run our script. Okay, so now we're printing the subtypes, and the subtypes is basically a list of dictionaries, right? They are directly in the payload, right? So this right-hand side over here is the payload, right? I'm using this as our reference. That's this key here. Yeah. Right here. Yes, it's a dictionary that contains a dictionary that contains a list that contains a dictionary. Got it. Okay. So we've managed to, so where we've gotten so far is we've managed to reach into subtypes, right? And what we need to do is now pull out the specific subtype that refers to our case, which is 134A-F21. Oh, yeah. I think Vince is casting. Yeah, so they're doing their own stream, so they can't join us today, I'm guessing. At the same time anyway. Okay, so now what we need to do is, we need to pull out 134A-F21. So an easy way to do this would be maybe we could just pull out the 0th element, or if we want to be nice about this, we can filter subtypes for the subtype that we care about, right? We can do like a list comprehension. So let's do it like this. We'll say form 134A-F21 is equal to, and then we'll do a list comprehension where we loop through the subtypes and we look for the one where form type is what we care about. So we'll say S for S in subtypes, right? If S of form type, hey Shua, if S of form type is equal to 134A-F21. So now this is going to be a list whose only values of form type is 134A-F21. And since we know that it only ever has one of those, Actually, it may have more than one of those. No, sorry, I'm misreading it. The 0 with 1 is that, then the first and the second, there's only one F21. Yeah. So since it only has one, we now have a list of length 1, and we can just pull out the 0th element. Right? Yeah. It's the way that this payload is displayed. So yeah, it's just an artifact. So when we look at subtypes here, this bit of string here is the actual value of what subtypes is. And then below it, 0, 1, 2, 3, it's now breaking it down by what it is by each element in the list. So essentially it's repeating, right? The part to the right over here is sort of the dictionary or list encoding, the JSON encoding of everything inside of it. But then what you see... Yeah. So I think it's to actually be helpful, right? Because in this case here, we're seeing the JSON encoding of 0. But if you click 0, you now continue to see the JSON encoding, but you also see it decoded as a, in this structured format. Make sense? Yeah. Okay, we're almost done with this function. We just need to pull out service request date from the form. Right? All right, let's do it. So we can now print that here. We can go here, we can say service request date is equal to the form at, and then we just need this key over here, which happens to be the exact same thing as the variable we created. And we should be able to print it. And if we do, the value here should be February 5th, 2019. Actually, instead of printing it, let's return it, because this is the end of the function, actually. And we can print the response from the function. Okay. Let's run it. Oh, right. We got it. Clap, 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 clap. First function done. So far, so good? Okay. We can remove our hello world. That's no longer needed. All right. The next step to do is to store this value if we haven't stored it before, right? So I'm going to do the simple thing right now and just store whatever response we get from calling this function. So we're just going to store February 5th, 2019 for now. And later on, we can make this more complex as needed to do more useful things. So like the idea that you were proposing at the beginning, where we keep track of every value over time, we can do that. We can do that after. Yeah, okay. All right, so now we need a function that gets the previous receipt date. Right? So let's see, let's call it def get previous receipt date. And what this is going to do is return the value of the previous receipt date. So we can, we basically need to open a file. And so we'll say with open, and the file we're going to open is the file that's going to be caching the data for us. So we can just call it .cache, and we'll call it .cache, and we will basically read from this as fp, and then fp.read. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that because we know at some point in the future we're going to want to store a lot of structured data, we can store JSON into this file. And so since that's the case, we can do .cache.json because that's the file that we're going to have. Sound good? It's a variable name. The variable basically points to the file, and I like the letters FP. Yeah. It's I don't know. I've been using it since college. Basically, it stands for file pointer. Yeah, it's actually used. It's used less in Python and used more in other languages where file pointers are a real thing. Yeah, I don't know that people generally use the FP. I'm just so accustomed to doing it this way that I don't even think about it. But you can call it anything you like. It's probably a better thing to call it something else. But I'm set in my ways. Sorry, we're gonna keep it as FP. Now the file is going to let's assume for now that the contents of this file are JSON, and if that's the case, then we're going to end up using this JSON library. And if that's the case, then we can actually do it this way. We can say JSON.load FP, and this will read the contents of FP and convert it to JSON for us and return it. So we can actually just do that directly here, return the JSON. Now, this is not going to work initially because there is no cache.json file yet. But that's fine because we should make the function handle that case for us. So let's see what happens if we call it get previous receipt date. And let's print it. So I've commented out the line that makes the call to the internet. We don't need to, now that we're testing this new file, we don't need to be calling that other one. We know it works at this point. So all we're doing now is calling the get current receipt date. All right, so let's run this. Yeah, let's see that. Okay. So this is what we expected. No such file or directory, cache.json. So what we want to say now is if, yeah, down here. Oh, I see. Sorry. So now it says that this file doesn't exist. And what we want is if the file doesn't exist, we want to maybe return the default value of what this file would contain if it were empty, right? Yeah, I think I'm making this more complex too early. I originally said we weren't gonna plan for this file to contain the data yet, so I'm just gonna return the text, fp.text, fp.read. Yeah. We'll come if later on when we want to come back, we can convert it to JSON, because yeah, right now I don't want to make the code that we're building for this piece more complex than it needs to be just to ensure that we're forwards compatible with what we're going to do later, because we can always change the code. Okay, so this code will still fail the same way. It still tells us file not found error. So what we could do one of two things. We can either check to see if the file exists, or we can catch the exception. I'm a fan of catching the exception. So what we'll do is we'll just say try. and accept, I believe, in Python. And then we're accepting file not found error. Okay. So what this is basically saying is, if you attempt to do this work of opening a file called .cache and read it, and you can't because the file doesn't exist, then you have an opportunity to do something different, right? And what we'll do is return none. Does that make sense? Because we don't have a value. We don't want the program to stop running. We just want it to do the most correct thing. And in this case, the most correct thing is that there is no value, so return none. And nice thing here is that we'll be able to compare what is the previous value to the current value, and none is a valid value to compare with. So let's try it out. If we run this, we now get none. All right. Next step. We now have the ability... Go ahead. Correct. What I'm trying to do is, if there's no file, then we're going to treat that state as the state where we don't have a previous receipt date value. And I'm representing that state as return none. As none. Yeah. Yes. We will eventually. We haven't done it yet. In some sense, I've sort of, I've allowed my experience to dictate some stuff that I then did implicitly. Let's look back at our pseudocode. So here's the idea. Retrieve the receipt date for a case inquiry. Then step 2, read the previous receipt date from disk. And I didn't say what I was going to do if I didn't have it. But implicitly here is, if I don't have a previous receipt date, then the previous receipt date should be none, right? That way, when I do step 3, which is compare the previous receipt date with the current receipt date, I can see that the previous one was none, and that the current one is whatever I get back from the internet. And by comparing them, I can see they are different. So I will still do the correct logic for that case. Yeah. Okay, so now we should be able to uncomment this, and then we don't yet need to print them. Let's assign them values. So we'll say current is equal to this, previous is equal to this. Schwa says if the only words in the file was the word none, the none is a string type and is not the same as none data type. Yes, that is true as well. We wouldn't have been able to tell it by the print statement though, but that is correct. Like, it would have printed none and it would have looked exactly the same on the output, but the comparisons would be slightly different because none, the type, is not equal to none, the string. Yeah. So if the way that could even the interesting thing is that might happen to us if, let's say, the website were to return somehow the value none in the service request date. We might end up storing the string none in our file, but hopefully that doesn't happen. But even if it did, it wouldn't cause a problem, I think. I would get notifications that say that the receipt date is none. I'll have to come and investigate it. Okay. So we have our current and we have our previous, and now we can compare them. We can say if current is not equal to previous, right, we want to do something. And the thing we want to do, if we look back at our pseudocode, is send the notification and update the previous receipt date with the current receipt date. So we haven't gotten around yet to sending a notification. We will be doing that very shortly. But we can do the second bit. So for now, sending a notification will just be print something to the terminal. And otherwise, don't print. So if you're not going to send a notification, we won't print anything. And we should put this in a function. In a sense, this function is our top-level function. We can call it main, because we're going to execute this function at the top. Does that make sense? Okay. So if these are not equal, then we will print current, right? That's what we're going to essentially send as a notification to us. And we also need to save this value back to the cache. So let's write a function to do that. We'll call it def set previous receipt date. And here we're going to say with open dot cache, and we should actually give this a variable name now, a constant, so that we can update them together. I'll do it shortly as fp, and then we'll just say fp.write, and this takes we need an argument. We need the value we're going to put into the receipt date. So let's call it receipt date. And we are going to write receipt date into the file. And that's it. That's all it needs to do. Let's quickly fix the problem where we have this duplication of the file name. So we'll just make a constant at the top here, and constants are usually capital case. So we'll call it cache file is equal to dot cache. And we will replace the two strings we have here with that. Next, we need to say set previous receipt date to current. So far, so good? Still there, Niwa-chan? Okay. Now we need the, yes, Shua says, yes, so far so good. Okay. So now let's have our main function. How do I do this? If main. There's usually a little snippet that does it for me. If main. Huh, where's my snippet? Now I don't know what it is. I apparently rely so heavily on that snippet that I have no idea how to do it by hand anymore. Python if main. This one here. Yeah, if name main. Okay, that's what I want. Okay, so for the non-Pythonistas here, this is basically how you get a script to run a function by default in Python. So you say if name underscore, if underscore underscore name underscore underscore equals quote underscore main underscore underscore quote, then we call the main function. There we go. It's just a convention. We could name it whatever we want. We could call it process. We could call it do work. It's a convention because if name main, then run the main function. It's a sort of a nice convention because we know it's a sort of a common thing that the function that is the primary one that will run in a file is typically called main, and that's true across many languages. You mean this one here? On line 42? No, you don't. So Python has a interesting. Okay, there's a lot here actually that I don't want to especially get into. The short version of the story is when you execute this file from the terminal, this variable called name with 2 underscores on both sides has the value main with 2 underscores on both sides. And this is different than if you imported this file. So like if you had another file and you said import some other file, the way Python works is it will typically execute that file that you write import on. But in that case, the name will not be equal to main if you do it via an import. It's only main if you run it from the terminal. Yeah, like I said, it's more detailed than we really care about. The gist of it is, this is how we want to invoke our main function. Schwa says, why do the if name equals main? Why not just call main? Yeah, you can. You can very well just do it this way. And he answered his own question. It is because you want the terminal execution and you don't want to execute main if you import the file. Yes, so that is correct. If you write the code this way, it will work fine in the terminal. But now, when you import notify updated receipt date, it will also execute the main function for you, which may not be what you intend if you're trying to use this as a library. All right. Again, it's detail that we don't care about, and in this particular case, it's kind of academic because we're never going to import this file, so it doesn't matter. Okay, let's run it. So what we should see, okay, let's talk through what it will do if we do this. If we run it, it will run the main. It will retrieve the previous receipt date. Sorry, the previous, and it will also retrieve the current receipt date. Compare them. If they're different, it will print it, and it should create a new file called .cache that contains the updated value. So let's run it. All right, so it printed it. This is our notification, and the .cache file got created as well. So if we open the .cache file, we can see that it contains the results of calling the internet and pulling down the current value. Great. Now, if we run it again, it should do nothing. And the reason it should do nothing is because the previous value should match the current value, and so it should print nothing. And that's it. So let's give it a try. Perfect. It works exactly the way we want. Now, let's try and simulate the case where it is different. So let's say that this code has been running now for several weeks, and the previous value was January, and now when we run the script, January is not equal to February. So let's run this. Nice. So it sends us a notification, February 5th. And it should be the case that our cache has been updated. Beautiful. So it replaced February with January. So far, so good. Can we see the cache? This is it, yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah, yeah, slight delay. What I should do is actually cast my screen in the live stream. I'll do that from now on. That way we don't have this problem. Okay. Yeah, cool. Cool, indeed. Okay. The next thing to do is send a notification. All right. So the way that we're going to send a notification is using this thing called Pushover. So Pushover. Now, there's a little problem here, and I'm not exactly sure how to do this, which is that Pushover will show, if I open the web page right now, it's going to show everybody on the stream and in the future my user key, which will enable anybody to send me notifications to my phone. So I want to not show this user key on the stream. On the other hand, I could always come back and just sort of blur it out for a post. So, I mean, there's only 3 viewers right now. Okay, yeah, I'm going to allow it to be seen. So here it is, okay. So here's Pushover. And what Pushover allows me to do is send notifications to my device. All I have to do is install their app. And they provide an API that allows me to make requests from the internet, essentially, and I should get a notification. So I have my phone in front of me here. We can test this thing out. We can say test message, send notification, and then there it is. I just got it. And if I open up my notifications, I don't know if this is really legible in the screen, but there's a notification for test message, Pushover test message. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a function that uses my user key and an app key to send me a message. And we'll write this as a function in Python. And when we call that function, we'll make that function work like a print statement. And that way, we can just replace line 38 from our script to do this. Okay. I'm going to make it easy for me to blur out things in the future, I'm going to do all the pushover configuration in the website in a different window. So sorry, you won't be able to see it as part of the stream, but I will describe it to you as we go. Okay, so all I've done so far with the pushover thing is actually just create a user account, and now I'm going to create an application. It looks like I can show this. So here I am creating a new application API token. And so the name of the app is going to be Uscis processing times update. Oh, can't be that long. Let's just call it Uscis notifier. Description, optional. URL, optional. Icon. Ooh, that would be nice. I don't have time to make an icon. So I'm just going to create this app. I'm going to, again, move this off screen to do it. Terms of service must be accepted. Oh, got to click that first. Create application. Okay. So now I have a API token. Yeah, I think the API... Yeah. So what I need to be able to do is store the API token and the user key in my client app so that when I run it, it will be able to read those values. Okay. So Vince says, I guess depending on how much you already use it, you could just reset it after stream. Yeah, that's the thing. I was planning to do it that way. And then I couldn't find a reset button for the key, which is why I became extremely worried about what's going on the stream. If I do find a way to reset it, that'll be the way to go. For now, though, let's create a new file, and this new file is going to be called. I'm going to call it new file .secrets.json. And inside of the secrets, oh, you're right, Vince, I found it. There is a way to reset the user key. if you believe your... Okay, so yeah, I will do that. Let's keep... I found a way to reset the user key. Okay. Yeah, we will do that. Okay. So that means it's pretty safe to do all the things. Okay. So here is my notifier, USCIS notifier app, and here is the API token key. And so what we'll have, so in our secrets JSON, we're basically going to store our app key and our user key. So app key looks like, so this is going to be a JSON file, so make sure we have the correct syntax. App key. And here is the app key we're going to use. And paste that here. And we also have our user key. And the user key is going to be, go back to Pushover. It's going to be this one. Okay. So there it is. No trailing comma in JSON. Don't do that. Okay. So now that we have this, I think we can load, what we'll do is load this secrets JSON, and we'll use these values to call the Pushover API. So we're going to need to know how to do that. So we can go to the pushover.net/API, and we're basically going to be doing a post. And here's the TLDR. Posts an HTTPS request to here. All right, let's do this. So in our notifier, we'll need a new function. And this function is essentially going to do what the Pushover API is telling us to do. So we'll call it notify. And notify will take a single text. This is what we're going to... we want this to behave kind of like print statements. So this is the message we want to send, or the thing we want to notify. So we'll call it message, MSG, because MSG is the king of flavor. And inside the notify function, we need to load our secrets. So with open .secrets.json as I like, yeah, Shua. I'm glad you got that there, Shua. Read our secrets as FP, and return. You know what? I'm going to put this into a different function. So return json.load FP. And let's see here. So we need to import JSON again. So it looks like we're using that library. Let's move this to a function called read secrets. Read secrets. I'm not going to bother with any error processing. We'll assume the secrets.json file is there. If it doesn't work, it will fail with the file not found, and then you should create it and populate it with the correct information. Okay, back to our notify. So now we have secrets equals read secrets. Okay, and remember, secrets is a JSON file from over here, and we're essentially going to be decoding app key and decoding user key for calling the post request over here. So we can start, I think we're ready to do that. So we can say response equals requests.post. The reason why it's post is because we are posting an HTTPS request, and we're posting to here, api.pushover.net/1/messages.json. Okay. Next, we have to pass our payload, which I've forgotten how to do again. How do I do this? Is it JSON? Yeah, it's JSON. Okay. JSON equals, and we're going to pass a dictionary here. So we have only three things we need that are absolutely required: the token, the user, and the message. So the token and the user are in our secrets, and the message is our MSG. Yeah. So token colon is secrets token. And this needs to be string because we're not in JavaScript land. User is, sorry, not token, token key. And then user is the same thing, but instead of token, it's user key. Hold on, no, I'm all wrong. One sec, let me check. App key. Okay, let's make them match. We want to be token key and user key so that it matches the API. Token key and user key. Let me double check. Token key, user key. Okay. And finally, message is MSG. And there is a thing in requests where you can raise an exception if the response is not 200. And I think we want to do that. So we want to say resp.raise for status. That way, if something breaks, we'll get an exception. If we don't do that, then then we won't get an exception when, let's say, if you make the request and the request fails because we formatted it wrong or something like that, or we didn't pass the appropriate set of parameters, it would just fail silently. So we need to make sure we do this resp.raise for status. Now we're basically at the finish line here. We're going to notify, or instead of print, we're going to notify current. And if I run it now, nothing should happen because my cache currently has February 5th, and that value presumably hasn't changed. Oh, I forgot to save this file. And so no notification. I should get no notification. Let's try. Okay. Yeah, no notification as far as I can tell. But now let's update our cache to something else. Let's set it to January. And rerun our function. Rerun our script. All right, moment of truth. There it is. Notification. February 5th. Oh, sorry, it disappeared. So it's now giving me the date. Cool. So now if we want, we can format that message up a little bit better. And ultimately now we need to take this script and schedule it to run periodically. But I'm running out of steam, so I'm thinking that this is a good place to stop. We finished the code. The next bit is to put this on a Raspberry Pi or put it on GitHub Actions and then run it in a cron tab. Now, the only little challenge with putting it in GitHub Actions is that I'm using this cache file. So I would need a place to store the previous value, some sort of database or something like that. So we would have to do a bit of investigation to figure out if there is any sort of persistent place I can store a value in GitHub Actions if I wanted to do it that way. And if not, then I would have to do a whole bunch of work to find a way to store something in Firebase or some other thing. So that will be a bunch of work. Probably the easiest thing to do, though, is put it on a Raspberry Pi and set up a cron tab. We can do that in a follow-up stream once, some other time. I'll schedule it. All right. So that was our stream. Thanks, Shua and Vince for joining, and Niwako. Niwako, are you still here? Oh, you've been so quiet. Oh, and Shaleen was here. Thanks for coming, Shaleen. Okay. So oh, thanks for coming, Grace. All right, everyone. See you in the next one. Bye, internets.